if only Africans knew that the true wealth of this continent is not in the minerals, but in the people.
Wow.
And I've also said, you look at countries that have unique USPs, unique selling points. When Chinese people arrive in your neighborhood, you have an idea of what they bring. When the Jewish people come into your neighborhood, when Indians come into your neighborhood, when Africans come into your neighborhood, around the world, normally people are not happy. And I've said, we obviously have minerals. And to what you're saying, we need to have the conversation of how do we reclaim, because we still have a lot. Still have a lot of minerals. We even have gas now and uranium, a lot of unexplored. The DRC, Sudan, Angola, we are wealthy for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years on this continent. But outside of just the minerals, which again, we were told by someone else, diamonds are valuable. We were told, and I'll reference diamonds later, gold is valuable. Some of our best exports have been music, black coffee, have been storytelling, whether through comedy like Trevor Noah. It's been Sarafina, The Lion King, with Double Lebo M, and it's staring at us in plain sight.
Yeah.
It's like the things that we are like, hey, all you guys do is make TikTok dance videos. You're like, that's our export.
Sure.
How do you then, like Ulatuma, create IP, maybe learn how the economy of the world work, create IP so that random people are not appropriating your culture, your heritage, your stories, and then you see it in a Marvel movie. You see it in a Black Panther, you're like, hey man, I know those blankets. No, I know, Babu John Kanye was there. And you're like, no, we need to do more of this and have a conversation on how we own this thing, so that if Hollywood comes here, if Germany comes here and wants to work with Umamu Esther Mahlangu and design a car, you have to engage us and don't see us as just miners. We are not these kids that are mining blood diamonds. I'm not just going to sing on your song and get $1,000 and clap hands. This song is not just me. It's a representation of my people and in movies, Hans Zimmer is another reference of someone who understands music on a much deeper level, of when you bring the sound, and he speaks about The Lion King, which is one of the movies he scored, and how with Lebo M they set, and from the beginning, Coming to America also does the same. It sets a tone. Anyone who is not African immediately is like, I'm in a different world. An African is like, I think I'm at home.
Yeah.
And it's something I think even when you land after traveling internationally, you land back here, and if you hear just that song, you're like, hey, you're like, I'm home. Denzel Washington, this is going to be my last point. Denzel Washington in an interview speaks about the importance of black directors. Because one of the things you said is no one can tell our stories like us. He says he makes a reference to Steven Spielberg and I think Schindler's List. Who did Schindler's List? Is it Spielberg?
Spielberg, yeah.
There's another director.
About Jewish culture.
Anyways, about Jewish culture. So he speaks about Steven Spielberg and he speaks about other directors, and he's like, or maybe he speaks about the mafia movies. Oh, Martin Scorsese and mafia movies. He's like, when we ask for African directors or black directors, it is not from maybe a competence or whatever, it's also a culture. It's not a racial thing, it's a cultural thing, because this guy understands what it means to perm your hair and have it burning. When you have a black female director who's speaking about a black woman's struggle, she can articulate in a way you'll never understand what it means for a black woman to walk in a room and every man is looking at her and she feels like she's being stripped naked. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, I can articulate that. So the importance of us telling our stories from our perspective, I think is very important.
Yeah, let me start from where you leave things off. So when I conceptualized my book, I was saying I want to talk about inclusion and take that debate to its economic aspects and not its political aspects. One of my interviewees yesterday is a top bank executive. And he says the same things that you say, that look, when you've got diverse teams, you are able to relate better with the customers, the majority of the customers in Africa. And who's going to be the majority of customers in Africa? It's black people.
Mm.
So the director not only understands the castes if they're telling black stories, but also understand what the touch points are if you're telling the story to a mostly black audience. But because they have grown up and this is why, by the way, I don't advance the idea that decoloniality must be complete replacement.
Yeah.
Because they have grown up in a culture that is dominated by Western thought and practice, they will still be able to capture the Western audiences because of the dynamism of the being they have become as a result of this duality. I am a person who has got a Western outlook, but my sense of self imposes itself in whatever I do. And as a result of that, I'm a dynamic film storyteller who can excite a Western audience while also exciting an African audience. Anyway, so I wanted to start there, that inclusion becomes economics then, not purely political calls for political political correctness in the sense that we want equality for political purposes. No, it is because inclusion itself makes economic sense. It makes you relate better with your customers, makes you succeed a lot better. And because you've got people who are both Western oriented and appreciate who they are as Africans, they're going to tell beautiful stories. My view is that the entire human experience ought to be a cumulative learning experience, in terms of which we get to embrace different people and all of those things so that we could become a greater being than what we were when we first started, even as the different cultures. So the pull towards nationhood is a pull towards a collective that is bigger than the individual constitutive parts. And when we meet at nation, we become bigger than the individual aspects, which is why when I hear divisive politics, I get uncomfortable. I appreciate the ability to speak and make others feel uncomfortable and feel pain, because it's through the pain that we can get to bigger realities, bigger knowledges, and thriving as a people.
Yeah, that's a lot. Closing off the film aspect, I find it interesting, and I don't know how you heard this from the Silicon Valley American guys, where they started terming politicians bad actors. That these guys are bad actors. They get given a script, but it's so horrible, it's not even, moving. Of which maybe Barack Obama was a good actor. We have bad actors in South Africa, being our politicians who read scripts. One of our favorite, arguably the most popular politician running today, or one of two, between himself and Ubaba Msholozi, Jacob Zuma, Julius Malema, went to go and sit on KFM, and there's a clip that I took from TikTok that was so brilliant. He challenges people to question Cyril Ramaphosa as a player and where he comes from and who funded him. He challenged us to ask certain questions about the late Utatu Mandela, about where he got money to buy his home in Houghton and. But I'm raising this because I'm bringing the link back to diamonds and how diamonds at some point were almost worthless. And the De Beers company, which eventually got taken over by the Oppenheimers, who eventually sold it, they found ways through Hollywood. A diamond is a girl's best friend. If a man loves you, he'll get you a big rock. And they increased the value of diamonds, which were arguably worthless for many people.